here today for another episode with Football Talk from Football Coach 365 channel. Today, I'm actually very happy to have here with me a person who has the joy of working probably for the best league in the world, the Premier League. Julio Costa is currently working for Fulham as a data analyst and is here today to have with me a fascinating discussion and share with us his experience of working with the best. So, without any further delay, let's welcome Julio. Hello, Julio. Thank you for accepting my invitation and be here with us today.
Thank you for the invitation, Lucas. Is a pleasure as well. And again, I'm always happy to discuss many things, especially obviously football is the heart of this. But like there's so many things in football that people might not realize that happens in the background, and I'm happy to contribute with this, of course.
Thank you very much for this. So, to start with, I will try to take you back in your early days when you first started coaching, because we have to mention that you started as a coach. So, when you first started coaching, what is your was your dream? What made you wanted to do it? And how did you end up coaching for big clubs like Chelsea, even in foundation phase?
So yeah, as you said, I was a football coach for 6 years when I arrived in the UK in London, 2016. And it was really interesting growing up. I'm from Portugal, so you know, usually we're kind of like dream to be football players in Portugal. And again, I was very average right back, so I was not good enough even to the standards at the time for a right back, which you didn't pass the midfield. That's the kind of right back that I was in. I was quick, so sometimes I would go up, and then my coach used to scream, "No, no!" So I always wonder why. Like why is he making me do this? Like I am actually quick. I could just go to the attacking third and again, crossing was not my biggest strength, but I could still put a ball into the box and create some threat. So I was always wondering why is he instructing these players to do this? It was always in the back of my mind as a kid, especially as a teenager when you start thinking, on your own and developing your own ideas and identity as a kid. And this was also during a time where, Mourinho started to be the big coach in name in terms of marketing, because Carlos Queiroz was the biggest, one of the, at least of my generation growing up, he was probably the biggest. Artur Jorge is probably maybe on the same level of Mourinho, but not many people in general know Artur Jorge, that he won two Champions League with Porto. He was like the biggest Portuguese coach at the time. And then Mourinho came after Queiroz, with the under 20 World Cup in 99. Yeah, or 90, no, sorry, 1994, I believe, 96, something like this. And then Carlos Queiroz went to Real Madrid and being the best assistant manager in the world. That's what you used to call him back in Portugal. And then Mourinho burst to the scene first with Leiria, a team not far from Lisbon, maybe an hour and a half, very modest, infrastructure is very, very small club, not respecting to Leiria. Now they're like refunded them again because that club disappeared. And he put them into fourth place. And it was impossible. He got sacked from Benfica after leaving
Yes.
Barcelona. Things didn't go so well, and then he did this amazing job with Leiria that the majority of people my age, 32 now, they remember this. And the squad that he assembled with the players were all from like, mid-table second division players at the time, that he brought them together. And oh my god, the football that they played, they were so tough to play against. I'm a Sporting fan, so I remember the games. It was like, how is this possible? And they were so competitive. and then Porto signed him in the January, signed Mourinho in the January transfer window, and I remember he saying that, next season we're going to be champions and this and this, and it's like, come on, you just came now, it's impossible. And then probably the two best teams I've, especially the Champions League season. I don't ever remember seeing a Portuguese team in my lifetime playing like that Porto team in the Champions League. And again, they were so complete in every kind of phase of the game, attacking, defending, transition, both attacking, defending, set plays. They were just unbelievable. And with players that, with people now, they think of Deco as like one of the best midfielders in all the time. Deco was playing second division the season before. He got, his contract terminated from Benfica. Manish as well from Benfica, like for a free transfer. These players, that were nowhere near the first division, he got them to Porto, and some that were on loan got back to Porto. And 2 years he was winning the Champions League, and everyone was like, "What the hell? Like, what happened?" And that's when everyone was like, "Wow, this man is brilliant." And then obviously there's the Chelsea bit when he came to London, and from that time I was like, "Wow, I want to be the best football coach in the world, like Mourinho, growing up." So I was like, I will get to know everything, players, teams, how they play, and all these different things. So that was my first, dream of becoming a football coach. And again, many of my generation always feel like this because of Mourinho in Portugal. And I guess for many in Spain, like Pepe, like Arrigo Sacchi in Italy, like so many coaches around the world that were so relevant for that generation to grow up as coaches, and everyone that is involved in football in one way or another. So that's my first dream of becoming a coach, and then coming to London and starting our what we call grassroots here. Very local, small school children, kind of like PE coaching sessions, plus like a small, very, very small club that I would never forget. Foxes FC was the first club, the first coaching experience. I was like, okay, what am I doing? I'm just putting some cones on the pitch, and then it was more than really babysitting at times, but it was an experience. They had a bit more advanced kind of team, so I got to coach them and trying to see, okay, so I'm going to do this exercise, I'm going to do this exercise. And I was thinking, okay, but then I'm just like 20 minutes doing this, 15 minutes doing this, and then to a game. And then there was a coaching syllabus, which was you have to coach this week, and then next week you have to coach this. And after like 8 months, I on top of this, coaching on the weekends, I got another place to coach throughout the week, and another one, and another one. And then the level, that I was coaching just kept going higher and higher. And then I was coaching for better grassroots teams, and then I got to actually, I had an interview with Fulham Foundation, but it was for a different program. So I was like, no, I actually want to coach like okay, a good standard of football. And then I joined the Chelsea Foundation as a coach, and I coached for like 3 years parallel to other private academies, that some boys were released from Leyton Orient, from like Wimbledon, some really good clubs. I had a kid that was released from Chelsea, another one from Fulham. So the pool of players that I start coaching, it was like, okay, this is actually better to work with. So it was like, yeah, this is nice. They can control the ball. I before that I was going around places
Important,
where,
yes.
yeah, yeah, where players couldn't even control the ball. So I was thinking in my head, I want to do this exercise that it's playing out from the back, but if they can play out from the back, then I have to start from scratch and just go, look, you have to actually control the ball first, very technical, more focused. And obviously, as the level of players that I got to work throughout, my 6 years, it definitely it developed a lot, to a point that now, before I joined Fulham, I was working with the group of the under 16, 17s that were trying to get to category twos and threes academies, and it was really good to work with them because it was not just the technical, but then more the tactical things that we were instilling. So that, yeah, it was really interesting, and I learned a lot on this journey as a coach. I think everyone does. If you're coaching, you're always learning about yourself, the players. You're always reflecting on how you kind of like inspire these players to achieve what you want. So it was always interesting for me in that sense as a coach.
As you mentioned, you are happy because you have players able to control the ball. Uh, this is probably the biggest advantage of coaches who have never played in a professional level because they are forced to start from the kids, the grassroots, to climb up the ladder. So they have the chance to do their practice with kids and try to train the very basics. Because in senior level, a coach will never get in a position to train the very basics of receiving the back foot, how to pass the ball, how to control it, because these are implied for the professional players. So, starting from the grassroots, this is an advantage for a coach. What do you think about this?
No, I agree because you then the level that you work, and especially there's a lot of professional players that they go to being football coaches. I wouldn't say that these players are sometimes the finished product, but at least the ABCs of receiving the ball, you at least already have players that can do that. And even if you go to academy levels like Fulham, Chelsea, and everything, these players know how to do it. Then you just coach something more advanced in terms of receiving. Are you receiving then between lines? And what is your next action, so these are the things. Are you going to receive to reverse the pass? So these are more advanced things that I would never imagine of coaching a player at grassroots level. You go, okay, receive, try to play out, all these things, like, and even before this concept of receiving, playing out, and so on, you're still going to receive it as a technical, as more
Yes.
technical detail, so it's definitely different. And I feel that whoever goes through that experience, from grassroots to different levels, you're more adaptable to situations as well, because you have to adapt to the level of football players you're working with, so you don't get frustrated. I remember at the last bits that I was coaching in football, I was not frustrated anymore. I remember at the beginning being so frustrated because I wanted to do all these different things. And then you start realizing, okay, I need to start with the basics and then develop the session through this manner. So yeah, it was interesting in that regards, and you really don't think about it until you look back to, oof, like having to take these footballs with me, on the
Yes.
bus, or the boots all with mud because they're not nice pitches and things like that. So yeah.
Because your role now is as a data analyst, I want to move on with that data about analysis. From my experience, there are two categories of analysts. They are the people who love the analysis. They are completed their courses. They study a lot. Maybe they are coming from mathematical or statistics or computer science background, and they move on either to the analysis, video, etc., or to the data analysis. But also there are the people who love football. They want to work for a club, but either they don't have the chance or they cannot proceed as coaches. So the next best thing is to be a member of the staff as an analyst. What was your journey? how you switch from coaching to the data.
Yeah, my kind of, my experience was actually very gradual. Some people just switch one day to another. Mine was, while I was coaching on my last years, I was doing a master's in performance coaching, at St. Mary's University here in London. And there was a module there I found it fascinating, which was performance analysis. And this lecturer was my mentor, and now we work together as well. So I'm lucky to do that. And it's really interesting because it was at the same time as well that in Portugal, having a channel that was solely dedicated to football, like, and they start showing as well the performance analysis side. And this was a guy that he had a blog, and he used to be a coach, and he became a performance analyst, and he actually became with a really good teacher in Portugal. This guy João Ferreira is an amazing manager and a teacher of the game as well, and he had the chance to go to Santos in Brazil with him later on. But that was really interesting to see his videos and how he would analyze and see the team structures, how they play, how they defend, and not just focusing, what usually some courses might see, don't focus on the ball, focus what's around and away from it as well. So it kind of, for me, it opened my eye to this side of the game that I thought that, I was okay, but I could have improved. And this course in my university was really interesting. I remember having to choose a topic. This was during COVID, so it was not in presence, it was online. So the final task was to choose one scenario. My scenario was Liverpool. If I was playing Liverpool, this was the second leg, I think, against Atletico Madrid. If I was Atletico Madrid playing against Liverpool, you need to watch these three games that Liverpool played and do a report. How do they play? Show some evidence. And then I spent 2 days watching three games from Liverpool, and then thinking, okay, so this is how they play out. It was really interesting starting seeing, and this was the time with Firmino, Sadio, Mane, and Salah, and the way that they pressed was insane. It's still to this day, but that was the original rock and roll Liverpool. How they play out, and then how Firmino dropped in to receive and play wide, and I was like, wow. And even the press, how they usually were so aggressive, and Firmino was amazing at this. You know, going up there straight away to make that the goalkeeper just launch it long, because there were no room from pressing. They were like amazing. So I remember doing this assignment and showing the videos, and again, no illustration animations or whatever. It was just me talking over some of the moments, and then I wanted to back up with some data because it was part of the assessment. So I was like, this is how Liverpool plays out. You can see in these three games, Van Dijk, how he switches the play long from his left sides, and the positions, who receives the passes the most in this side of the pitch, and how they attack the most, like which side, and the variations, against different blocks, how they play. So that was really good because I start to understand that side of football as well. Just like how you want to play, but what happens when you actually play against teams that defend in or press you in a different way. So that was really interesting. And from there, I was like, you know what, I really like to do this. So I started the blog, which I haven't done, with a classmate of mine, a really good friend,
The
and
analyze. Yes,
exactly, yeah,
yes,
yeah, the
yes, I
analyst
saw it.
side. Yeah, so the first thing was like Lazio and Leverkusen. I really thought they were really interested, and why they were so good against some type of teams and not so good against the other ones, and try to provide as much as possible in terms of how they played, how did they kind of press, what type of press was it, the triggers that they use for the pressing against different opposition, if it was a high or a low or a mid, kind of like mid-table teams, and which that they performed the best. So that was really really interesting. And then I had a chance to kind of like go as an assistant analyst for FC Wimbledon, because of they just came out of COVID. they didn't have any funds, so I couldn't stay, and I still had to work and pay my bills, so I was not gonna go do that for free. So in the meantime, then from there, I started to learn how to do different visualizations on Tableau software because I've seen all these people programming on Twitter and doing these amazing visualizations. And it was like, that would be a really good skill to have, especially even if it's just for analysis or anything. And then I start following so many accounts on Twitter that loads of them that are working for amazing clubs and they were kind of my inspiration to see how you would use these visuals. And because I didn't know to program, I was like, I have to do at least 80% of them on Tableau. If I can do that, that's very good. So I just start to play around with different types of data. And this was a time where on a voluntary basis, I was doing some scouting, remote scouting, video scouting for Mansfield Town. Someone that I used to work as a coach was the head of recruitment there, and then he left Mansfield and he was like, okay, I'm in Nasves Ball Club in second division in Denmark. Do you want to do the same? So, very quickly watching players, with the quality of the footage, sometimes so dreadful, but it was what was available on Wisecout. So you had to watch the games, make some like quick reports on 20 passes, this is how they make, where they make, this is my report using a bit of data. And then on the NASFED one, I had access to the data that I had from Wisecout. And this is when they ask, okay, does anyone knows how to quick filter, just can anyone just quickly go on Excel and create a nice, visualization of the best center forwards in the league that we could probably from this short list that we would sign that is under 25, doesn't cost anything almost for the league, and has this like XG and shots and everything. And that took me 2 minutes in Tableau because I was very good at it. And then when I sent them, everyone was like, okay, do you want to be the data analyst? It's volunteer as well, but you can still do it and put it on your CV. So it's like, yeah. And then my main responsibilities with them was to be, using this data. And then it was interesting because the owners thought that the people in London, because mainly people were in the UK and London, they were just like doing this for fun as a joke. And then they saw the reports and they're like, okay, so you guys are actually serious about this. It's like, yeah. So it was really interesting. Unfortunately, my time was short with them. There was some personal things going around with the staff, and because it was a voluntary role, there was some disputes with some people, how things were done, and etc. And communication was very poor, which I learned that communication is essential in any role that you are. Especially in football, where there's a lot of things that, it doesn't matter the level you're in, communication is always very important. And finally arrived to Fulham. I applied. Funny enough, and this is the experience that I didn't mention because I always leave this to the end. This experience, while I was the performance analyst in a private academy, I set up. I was coaching and performance analyst, and we had this wearable device that I've seen the data because I played around with it before. So when I was applying for Fulham, and one of the data sets that they sent me is this, I was like, okay, this is easy. I know this data set because I work
Yes.
with it. So it was very, for me, it was easy to see. And then I joined Fulham. I was successful, and that's how I transformed from myself from being a coach, a scout, a data analyst, a performance analyst to more data science. But I have experience of everything really.
Just something, Julio, I wanted to ask you from what I understood, the data analyst for football teams, the majority of them are to gather, collect, make visualizations, and explain the data. Is that correct? I'm asking because the last years I also like to play around with some data. And there are a lot of research, but from the data science point of view of building models to predict the performance, let's say, of a new player, what players to recruit, etc. But this is more deep in data science. Is then done and data analyst in a club who is mostly to explain and read the data.
Yeah, it's a good point, and probably, and again, and on Twitter and many things, you will see all these data models, and even you have matrices based on data models, which is great. Don't get me wrong, but
Yes,
coaches want to know about the present,
yes,
and they want to know about what has happened on the pitch and what has been happening on the pitch for a period of time. So yes, we need to develop these different metrics, but you still want to know what your players are doing. Like for me, because my role is with the All Academy and I have different groups from 21s to under nines. Obviously, under nines to 12s, it's not as big as, for example, 13s and 14s, and 14s and 13s and 14s is not as, more, we don't gather that much compared to 16s and above, because these are very important like phases of the club, especially when you go into PDP 16, 18s and 21s, which is, it's the most important one for the club in terms of academy, and getting these players from the academy system to the first team, or whatever, depends on the club's kind of philosophy. But we need to see exactly what these players have been doing in terms of their development. Yes, okay, we can develop, kind of models that, okay, if they've been performing like this, when they're going to perform or how much, yes, that is great. But as I said, coaches want to know who's been the best player on the pitch for that position in this amount of X games. Can we create our own systems to improve the players' performance and their development throughout the season? This is what is important for me. Whatever work I do, it has to be with, obviously it's around the players, their development, and in that regard, it has to be, a game is done. This is the players' report according to the coaches' metrics that they think this is how we play. We need to talk with the coaches and the analysts, because there's three different languages here. There's the language of the data scientist slash analyst. There's the language of the performance analysts, who are a bit similar. There's some changes, and then there's the language of the coaches. You know, we need to understand what the coaches are saying that we need to do as a department, because we are together with, I am together with the performance analysts. We are one department, so we speak in the same language, because I know that language, and I know the languages of the coaches. If they want to see, there's all these metrics. They say, oh, the player does these many interceptions or ball recoveries, great. A lot of coaches that, and again, if I didn't understand the lingo, that would be more difficult for me to have my role and to understand my role. So many times coaches want second duels. If I didn't know what the second duel was, I would probably not, okay, I wouldn't create the metric that I would create. So, okay, so I want to see exactly how many second duels, which is, for my definition, is a duel after another duel, to see how many our players win, because it is important for a lot of coaches. So that is something that, if I didn't understand that language, I wouldn't translate it to the pitch. So it's really important to know exactly, and in analysis we call that operational definitions. So if I'm creating the other way around, if I'm creating a metric, I need to tell the analyst what it is, and I need to tell the coaches what it is in coaches' language, and how we actually calculate it and what goes into it. Because there's no point in creating all these different models if we don't get the basics right in this way. Because we need to communicate effectively with staff and coaches of what we're doing, what we're measuring, how we're measuring, and how we're going to visualize. And can they understand? If my visualizations are okay, great. If not, then I have to change to an easier way for them to intuitively start to interpret them by themselves.
And what about the metrics? You mentioned about new metrics or other actions you are trying to count in the game. But because you are working for your position is in the academy, where you don't have platforms like Scout or Opta to give you the data. What are you doing? What is the procedure you follow for the, let's say, under 13 or under 14, 15? You are coding the game to get several metrics.
So yeah, so again, our analysts, and because again we're a modest club, we're not like Chelsea, Arsenal, City that have these amazing resources. We have to be creative on
Yes.
on how we measure our things. And again, because of resources, we measure what we have. In this case, our players. So again, it has to be consistent across time because a lot of these boys they will stay from they're under nines to we have some cases of players going to 21. So we need to keep track of their progression throughout the years. So we don't code the same level of detail, but if I wanted to see a certain metric that I create for the 21s, I try to create it in a way that will be translated across age groups, at least a few age groups. So I know that if I have a under 15, I know that by the time he's within the 21s, I know the progression of this metric. And it's really interesting because now I can start comparing the level of success relatively to the age group that they face. So if they're in the 15s and he has this much success, and again, there's many factors involved. Could be maturation, growth in maturation. It could be opposition, that they face. But from a basic premise, like they're always going to play against different oppositions, regardless. But if they're in a good standard of a team, which is us across the academy, I can still I can start benchmarking. Okay, so under 15s, this winger is the top of the 15s. By the time he was a 16, this is exactly how he was actually performing. And the same thing when he was under 18, this is how he was. And if he was a 21, this is how he was performing on under 21s. And if he went to a first team somewhere else, I actually know exactly now. So uh, because what we measure is the same that everyone that has stats bomb or the measures. So I can just say, look, here are under 15s level of a winger performance. This is the 18s level. This is the 21s level. This is the first team, let's say League One or League Two. This is the first team of the Premier League or Championship. And then you start seeing performances and how much does that same amazing performances drop or not according to different types of opposition. So you can still do a really good work of measuring and this is good because then you can start using more interesting analyses across time because at the moment there's always like okay, this is the data which a lot has no context, so for our analysis we try to put as much context as possible.
So you have talked about lots of information that are very interesting, but just to have a framework, what is, can you explain as for our viewers to understand better uh, a weekly microcycle uh, from the data analyst point of view? What is the procedure you follow from Monday after the finish? You finish a game on Saturday or Sunday until the next game. What is the flow of your work?
So yeah, so again, it depends on the age group. So if it's 18s and 21s, we get up to data, so it's easy for me to create a quick report. Just 3 pages, things that coaches want to see in terms of how we play and what they want to measure against
I-
all the
i-
teams.
It's individual reports or team
No, no,
reports.
a team report. Yeah, a
Team
team
report.
report.
Okay.
This is a team report. Again, if you want to evolve into a player report, that can be done. But the focus is how we play. It's still fresh on the coach's mind. They can see the report. Okay, this is how we've done. Usually, because 18s and 21s is not a first division league, so it might take 1 or 2 days, but it's good because they have 1 day off straight away. So that's it. 2 days maximum. That's the Opta report. In the meantime, the performance analysts are coding our own way of coding the games, which is more individual. This obviously you can do team stuff with it, but the focus is for the player development. So after they do that, let's say, it probably takes them 2 days to code, 1 day, depending on how they flow with it. Then I create this individual report. I create our own metrics. There's about 460 something from them, from all these actions that they code. It includes very specific scenarios, different metrics, and then I send these reports to the coaches to see what it is. So that is, and again, because I'm doing multiple age groups, it could be that for 16s and other age groups, the reports could be similar, but because we don't have Opta data, so that will be my week. And then again, if I'm innovating something, that has to be some space. In terms of cycles, let's say if there's like 5, 6 games, on top of this workflow, then I have to create the same in terms of team report of 6 weeks, and the same thing for individual player reports of 6 weeks. For the other age groups, because of how football works in academies is different. So the cycles for reporting, they're longer. So, there's actually more time in the meantime to actually do those, while the other ones has to be every 6 weeks. And then again, because we we are quite good the last 2 3 years, we're sending a lot of players from the academy on loan. Again, doing reports for the boys on loan as well, it's really important, and it's part of this cyclical workflow as well, every 6 weeks. And then like you have to be on top, who's doing what, are they playing, are they doing well. So that there's different types of reporting in that sense.
You are the only data analyst for the academy.
So yeah, so I'm the only data scientist in the academy. There's someone who sometimes, depending, we do have an internship, which is a collaboration with one of the universities. That every season I have a data scientist that want to learn and want to go to they're in university, so they have a placement, and then I get to share my knowledge with them, and it's good to help as well. So yeah, I get some help with the workload, and again, I do like to give responsibility to whoever has that role and develop themselves, because then I ask them, I want you to do a final project with everything that you do. What would be interested? Because in a way or another, that person will always leave their mark with something as well. And it's good for me that, I never had to uh, work with someone that I had to teach. So it's really interesting because you learn how to teach as well. So it kind of reminds me a bit of the coaching, that you have to coach someone to do something. So you have to direct and teach how to do things. And throughout my week, if I have to innovate or you know, sometimes there's always requests as well of, okay, I'm doing a study case on my midfielders, can you put something, of all the data that we have of these, could be anything that coaches find relevant to the way that they play, not just the summary of statistics. No, they want to see more advanced things. If they receive the ball, how many lines did they break after the first pass, after receiving the ball? Did they do a lot? They don't. They just play backwards. What about carries, like stepping in with the ball? How many do they do that to break the first line of pressure? So all these different things, we need to showcase, because if this is important to how we play in one of the teams, then we need to be able to present.
Something I wanted to ask you from the very beginning. I am hearing you speaking about the data, and it seems that indeed you like a lot, but you switched from a coaching role to a more, let's say, in quotations, office behind the desk and the laptop. But what do you love more? Have you ever wondered how your coaching career could progress? Do you miss being on the pitch and training with the players?
That is very, and a lot of people always ask me this question. It was a very odd, in the beginning change. I got used to it. I'm not gonna lie, especially in London, sometimes the weather is awful, so you're just sitting in your desk, with your laptop. Sometimes is nicer than being outside. But I did miss, and after 3 years, I went back to the grass in the last month and a half. I'm doing my WFB, so
Ah,
was
great.
it was really interesting to go because I know these players later. So it was really good to see them actually and interact in a different way. Usually I'm more hands-on with 18 to 21, so my contact is more with them because they're full-time players, and I was with the younger ones, and it was really interesting to kind of like see and then start thinking, okay, the coaches from the other age groups, the concepts and what they want to, because the sessions that I'm doing, it's about those age groups. So, how am I going to create those uh, we call them the individual development sessions that a few different players, different units, and do the sessions. I think it was really interesting to go back on the grass and to do that. But who knows? I'm happy to be working in a high level environment. That's something that I always wanted to, and I'm lucky that I had so many experiences that who knows? I can be part of the grass stuff, of a team in the future. I don't know, it's football, but at the same time, with the age, my dream of that as a kid of becoming the football coach has developed into more working in a high environment of football and still having a stable career in football. So that those things will change with age and your life in general. So for me, I'll take it as it is. And to be honest, I do think I learned a lot in the last 3 years. Uh, because you're so exposed to different levels of football. I'm lucky that there's the IN, but not as you know professional. There's people, there's players that will be going and transition to one level of football to another. So that's really interesting to see the staff that I work with, which is coaches, from under nines to under 21s, ex-professional football players, like and you learn so many different things and has been amazing from all the concepts that I learned from these last 3 years have been amazing. So when I see comments on Twitter, and about all these team has done better than this, and there's so and I don't want to be critic with anyone, everyone has their own idea of football and what should be played, which is great. But when you start seeing people, okay, you have to play like this way or like Guardiola. No, no, you don't have to do that. If you have the players to do it, great. If you want to teach your players to play that way, great. But that doesn't mean it's better than the other. There's different skill sets, and again, this is relates to me in football as well. I'm quite adaptable. You work in your environment, and if your environment is good to play that kind of football, it's great. If not, you adapt to the circumstances. And the second thing for me, it's the level of what would you deem that is success. There's a lot of people that think that some coaches or some clubs are failures or success, and that is like the worst kind of thing that they're thinking, because if you're working in football and you're working to achieve what you want to achieve, that for me that's already success. And a lot of people think that success for them it might be winning the Champions League. That is a type of success, if that is your goal.
Yes.
So there's different things that I learn and yeah, and that's how I see football nowadays.
and you help me with your last words about the things you have learned the last few years. I wanted to ask you, what is the feeling of working in a Premier League club? Because you have transition from low division clubs and academies going to Fulham, even if you are not in the first team, you are in a Premier League club. What is the feeling? Uh, what are the benefits of working for such club? I think the environment and the exposure you have to high level information are valuable for you. I can assume.
Yeah, no, as you said, you're completely right. I remember the first time, my friends, because in my group of friends, I'm the only one that works in football, and we're, massive football fans, and they were like, "Oh, how is it?" And in the beginning, it was like, "Yeah, I mean, it's very cool, like I got to do to work for a football club, and when I joined exactly when Fulham was starting the championship season, after being relegated. So then everyone started asking me when Fulham and won the way that won with Marco Silva's first season. Everyone was like, "What do you? How does it feel to work for a Premier League club?" I was like, "I mean, it's amazing. Obviously, you get used to it. For now, it's like." You're just used to. But I would say that the biggest thing is that the stuff that you work, the level is unbelievable, and the information that you get, like if I was just someone that, running a platform or a blog, and if I don't have resources, it's probably not going to be the same as someone is in my position that I want to see a game, I have access to uh, thousands of game. I want to get data from whatever game that happened around the world. I have access to it. I work with amazing people that, their experiences or how they see football it's just like you take information from everywhere. And again, you're right about the exposure. I've encountered amazing people that work in football as well, in other clubs, in national teams, and things like that. Because I work in football, probably that would have not happened if it wasn't the case. So yeah, I mean, it's really good. The last 3 years for me in terms of experience, like who do you get to work with, the stuff that we have. I learned from someone that just left us in January to Liverpool, and you can see this was someone who was very top at the club, and the work that together we set is amazing, and I learn a lot from this analyst as well, because he probably at 29 years old of age, he probably knew more about football than everyone, everyone that I've seen in my life and I talked, which was unbelievable. Everything. You want a solution for a team that plays 4-3-3 against a low block? Here's your video. Here's your of just pure watching football and databasing millions of hours of football. And then explaining every concept of I was asking, yeah, but why don't they do this? It was like, yeah, because that's how they're gonna play. Then, of just like thinking of players that are similar to other players. Sometimes we would have like, a coach would like ask him, "Oh, do you have videos of a winger?" Well, I'm with a winger because for me, one of the craziest positions that you can be creative is like you have a winger that does this, and it's like, hang on a sec, go into database, all click, So this is the kind of person that I've been working for 3 years, and it was mind blowing when you have that kind of people that you work alongside, and you learn and absorb so much. And because I'm in an environment that I'm literally coaches, analysts, scouts, you kind of see everything and you learn different things every day. How people scout, how do they do it? What are the methods? What they're looking for? Even the language. compared to what I used to look at when I was scouting. It's completely a different level. And then you start realizing, okay, so this is if I was going to see a game live, this is what I would look for individual, and this is how I would write a report. And again, I never then won myself at Fulham, but if I want to create a report of a player, I know exactly how I would word everything. If I wanted to speak about something, specifically strength, I know exactly how I would do it because I have, access to these conversations on a daily basis.
You mentioned about scouting, and there is something I wanted to ask you. Uh, in a recruiting procedure, it's very difficult to see hundreds of players, their video, as to decide whether you are going to continue watching the player or leave him on the side. So, when you are asking your scouts or your recruiters or your analysts for suggestions, it's and because it's difficult to see the videos, I think, in my opinion, it's a very good way to start with the data, to have some metrics. Let's say you are looking for a defender. What are the most important metrics for a defender? You are going to the platform, put the filter, create a list with, let's say, 10, 15 center backs, and then going to watch them. For you, and this is my question, what are the two, three most important metrics for defenders, midfield, and forwards? And in your personal opinion, who are the best right now in regards of metrics in the Premier League, if you have uh, such opinion?
Yeah, I think from a recruitment standpoint, obviously if there's data available, which again, if you're working with under 18s plus, there's data available. So and I think it's more than that. I'll probably just think about a system where, first of all, you cannot have, if you're talking about center defenders, you need to split them left foot and right foot, because that is what I would do. That I see people just putting central defenders as like all of them. No, no, you need to split because obviously, and this is my understanding, very rare cases you're going to see a right-footed center half, on the left and the left-footed center half on the right. There's few coaches that like to do that in the build-up. There's a few, but most of the cases, I would say about 85 to 90%, a left center half footed is probably going to be playing the back three on the left side, or as a back as a two in a back four on the left side for the build. So these are very important things. How do you want to set up your team? Let's say if I had this club that I'm working and I'm the head of recruitment, I would think straight away. Okay, for my center halves, I want if the manager wants to play out, I want my centre halves to have at least this completion of forward passing because you want to build. And sometimes it doesn't necessarily have to be forward. If he wants to build, in the back three and he wants to spring some uh, passes to the wing back, you still need to see the completion rate of those, because that's important. As long as the player is comfortable, and again, some data companies don't have the pressure of how much pressure they get, because if you have that level of data, then you start seeing that they play under pressure, so that is perfect for a build. If they have a lot of passes under pressure compared to the level of passes that they do, that is very good. And if they're successful, that's amazing. One of the center halves have to be good in the air, because if you want to play out, you're going to face teams that they will play for the long direct type of football, so you need center halves that can win duels, or at least that are actually engaging in duels. And you need to have a center half that is really good at picking those second balls with clearances and intercepting, whenever they play behind you. So you really need to have those. They're the last man tackles or interceptions. You really need to see that kind of data if there's available, or some Opta data they sometimes include if it's the last line or not. So you need to look at that. For me, those will be for center half the most important thing. for fullbacks because I love fullbacks that know how to cross. That is,
You were a fullback
yeah,
also.
yeah.
You know
So
the position.
yeah, you need to know how to cross, and again, people think that crossing and there's different definitions, what is a successful cross. Some people might think that a successful cross is something that you put in the box to create threat and a chance. Yes, for me that is something that that out of 10 crosses, maybe one or two are going to be a shot or a goal at least. So those fullbacks are really important. If they create a lot, a lot of people, yeah, but they have to defend. I'm like, the goal of football is to score goals. So the closer you are to win games, obviously you can work with developing your fullback and kind of like it's not that you're gonna have a complete fullback that can do both. It's almost rare to find one that is really good defending 1v1, that can really put good crosses in the box. So at least
Maybe
one full,
Walker, City.
yeah,
Maybe Walker of City is
yeah,
good in both ends,
in both, yeah.
attack and defense.
Yeah, so as long as if you have one fullback that can do that and the other one can defend, you're good. And then midfielders is, I would say, depending on the type of midfielders that you want to play. If you want to play with a more defensive midfielder, then you need someone who creates a lot of transitions in your favor, that will create transitions and play. So that's really important. That wins duels, tackles, interceptions. That is a really good midfielder that will thrive on second duels. Then, if you want to complement that with a playing or box to box midfielder, then you would look at something like carries, for example. If it's a really good ball carrier that can bring the ball forward a lot and has a good amount of success in terms of passing, that is really great. If you want to play with three midfielders, three central midfielders, one has to be more creative, that puts balls either from a set piece or from open play, creating chances, assists, key passes. That's really interesting. That's really important because that is like how you create chances as well. That's probably three main positions on the pitch for me are the fullbacks, the 8/10, and your wingers, because you want your wingers then to kind of create chances, either creating threat, carrying, cutbacks, maybe crosses if they're good, or even finishing, because nowadays the winger is becoming more of a second center forward, at least one of them. So you need one. For me, those are the metrics I would do that. And a center forward, obviously you want to see players that score goals, but if you set up teams that they are actually creating chances for others and actually holding the ball a lot or being involved in attacking possessions, that's very important. So it depends. Again, if I want to put players, there's Van Dijk, for example, this season he's been enormous as a center half on the left side. He's been amazing. If I would to put a midfielder that is box to box, the end, for example, Endo is at Liverpool is being amazing. Obviously, you have Rodri, that does everything, defends, attacks, uh, score goals as well. For midfielders nowadays, it's more and more important that they can actually score goals. Maybe in the near future you're going to see center halves as well that will be having that ability to shoot from outside the box. Then they will go for a club for 100 million because now you need more people that can actually score goals to win games. When you're facing deep blocks and the center half has a bit of some space, you never know. There's going to be maybe midfielders that are going to be adapt to play as a center half in the future. So these I would say, players. And obviously, if you have like your Bruno Fernandes, Kevin De Bruyne kind of players that create chances every now and then for me those would be the highest standards of kind of like chance creators. And then you have Bellingham, and all these players are amazing at finishing as well, like Rodrigo, Vinicius, Kvaratskhelia from Napoli, that they create so many chances and they score as well a lot of goals. For me, those are like insane for metrics to look at. And if you see like talent like that, especially at the younger age groups, the better.
But how do you evaluate a player uh, who has certain instructions from his coach for doing something specific, but he's also capable of doing something else. Let's say that if you have Van Dijk, who has a very good long ball or playing with his feet, playing for a middle table or low table team with the instructions of defending in a low block and only looking for a counter attack. How can you evaluate his playmaking skills? It would be very difficult because you do not have such information.
You could potentially create your own if you adjust what we call to adjust these metrics to possession. So you would see the average possession that the team has. So let's say if this team had 30%, then obviously the other team have 70%, and there's formulas that you can, from a data perspective, you can adjust all these metrics to possession,
Okay.
and then you would see. And I think there was someone from Liverpool that they've seen. I think it was Robertson at the time when they scouted him, and also I think it was him in the two examples that he showed in this online kind of like group, training ground group session. It was him, and for centre backs it was Maguire and Van Dijk, and they were like they adjusted the metrics for possession, and this was 6 years ago or seven almost,
Okay.
and when they've done that, they've seen that yes, Maguire had a lot, but Van Dijk like his longer passes were more accurate. So they went with that decision, and obviously they knew Van Dijk already from all these different clubs, so they already knew exactly the data points when he was at Celtic and then at Southampton. So they knew already that it didn't matter what team he played; he was still very good at it. So it's a a manner of adjusting your metrics per possession. Obviously, there's always going to be tactical aspects that you might not be able to measure because it's just how it is. Data is always fallible in the end, and you can make your narrative about whatever it is with the data you have access and whatever you're trying to tell people. But at the same time, if you have things in an organized manner, you know exactly what is the message that you want to pass with. And if you want to scale things to, okay, in this time period, you know, Van Dijk has made these kind of like success rates of playing out from the back because then you start getting context of the data, passes starting putting rules and things like that. So for the build up, he's been involved in these and these many passes with his success at Southampton. The same thing you can do that with, when he was at Celtic. And now at Liverpool, if another club was to buy, which is, I don't think is going to happen, but you would do the same. And I guess that's how you probably would have good success on finding these players. What I find nowadays is that a lot of people think recruitment is just the numbers of, oh, he's done 20 passes. No, there's more context and more data. And nowadays you can almost, with things like Opta and StatsBomb, you can really, really create very specific things. How many passes do this player receives with success, on the half space, in the attacking third, and how many he actually keeps him to himself, he controls, and then he passes to someone else. So now you can actually see all these different things, and you can start creating your own advanced metrics based on these things, and actually you see now if whenever opt-in stats bomb start adding more layers of information, which this is probably something that they've been missing for a long time. And now, because every other club that I know, and they will be okay. Can I have pressures? I need
Yes.
pressures. I need to
Yes.
see how many passes he receives under pressure and he actually plays forward. Because now that will give you, okay, he's really good to retain possession, in this area, of the half space, close to the penalty box. Then he can just spring a pass and create a chance if you want to, if this is the kind of instruction we want to give to his player if we sign him. And again, there's caveats, so if I'm scouting a player, let's say I'm not doing it, but if I was to scout a player, and I would apply filters to the data first, yeah, and then I would look at the games where this player actually featured, and then I have to think, okay, so this is how his team play. If they building up in the back three, and he's important to spring passes to the 8 or the 10 or the 9, then he would be a good fit. If not, then either we adjust how this player, because if he's still good in the box, maybe he has a different utility to the game model. But then again, this is all approved by managers. You cannot sign a player in 2024 without the manager's consent because he's not going to play. Because that doesn't fit the model, the game model, which is everything revolves around the manager and the players.
A very interesting opinion about this because it was something that I always had a question about it, how to evaluate players playing in different leagues or different levels, if they are fit for a team model, and thank you for clarifying that. So to reach the end of this,
Sorry, Lucas,
for me,
can I also add something to that?
yes,
Yeah, yeah. And again, I would assume that a lot of clubs are thinking, especially for the younger players, if they reach a certain age, how many minutes do they play in this professional league, before they sign
yes,
it? Because it counts as well. You cannot sign a youngster, let's say if he's 18 or 19, with 250 minutes. If you're going to sign these players, that's because they actually had a lot of game time in these first teams. And even players, you start seeing, okay, if he has like overall his career like 8,000 or 9,000 minutes in League Two, then he has enough experience to maybe have a jump to League One or Championship. These are
yes,
things that people also look at.
yes. I understand about this because I also want to know about the completed games, the games that the players played, because it is a factor that shows a part of the value of the players that the previous coaches really trusted him to use. So before closing, and thank you again, Julio, about this amazing discussion and the valuable information you gave from, again, a Premier League club, and how you work there as a data scientist about the academy. Any conclusion from you before reaching the end? Any final thoughts, either about your work, Fulham, or the data scientist role? Anything?
I would just say, don't be afraid of if you're going into any kind of capacity in football. Don't be afraid of failing. We human beings, we might fail at different things. What counts is your experiences, your own development, what you can learn. And again, you might get an opportunity as a coach, as a different role, because in a lot of countries, for example, a performance analyst is an assistant coach, is another
Yes,
coach,
yes.
and if you start learning about different facets of the game, that will always improve you as someone that works in football. For me, that is like my thoughts on it because I went through that.
Thank you again for that. Your journey, I think, will inspire a lot of people who want to work in a professional environment and struggling to understand and decide where to go, and that a person can always switch road if they are in the right environment. And thank you for again for accepting the invitation and for this lovely discussion with you.
It was my pleasure as well, and I hope that people will enjoy this.
Thank you again, and I hope Fulham have a very good end of the season.
Thank you.
Definitely, because you are doing a great job this year. Really a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice evening. Bye.